Welcome back to Trackside Conversations. I am Jordan and Maya is with me today. And today's episode, it's a big one. We're diving into a case that has stirred debate from Nevada to New Mexico and beyond, the 15-year suspension and $100,000 fine handed down to quarter horse trainer Ricardo Castillo Jr. after 4 of his horses at the 2024 Elko County Fair tested positive for methamphetamine.
Yeah, and before we jump in, we want to make something very clear. Everything we're discussing comes from publicly released regulatory decisions, official statements, and documented hearing transcripts. We're not speculating about intent, guilt, or motives beyond what regulators themselves have published. Our goal is simply to unpack what happened, what the penalties mean, and how this case fits into the bigger picture of equine safety and racing integrity.
Great point. Because when you hear a headline like 4 horses test positive for methamphetamine, it's shocking. But behind that headline are layers, regulatory procedures, testing protocols, legal appeals, and a disciplinary system that exists to protect the welfare of horses and riders. So let's rewind and start from the beginning.
In June 2024, the Nevada Gaming Control Board issued a major sanction: 15-year suspension, $100,000 fine, disqualifications for 4 horses. These penalties followed laboratory findings that 4 horses trained by Ricardo Castillo Jr., all of which had won their races, tested positive for methamphetamine and its metabolite amphetamine. 2 of them also tested positive for tramadol, another prohibited substance. Now, the Nevada Gaming Control Board handles investigations and enforcement. The Nevada Gaming Commission then serves as the final decision maker. That distinction becomes important later.
Exactly, and the timeline matters too. All these positives were associated with races at the Elko County Fairgrounds between August 21st and September 2nd of 2024. All 4 had post-race blood and urine samples showing methamphetamine and amphetamine. Dr. B and Lightning McQueen also tested positive for tramadol.
That's crucial because regulators don't take the presence of controlled substances lightly, especially ones classified as prohibited foreign substances. These aren't therapeutic medications. They're substances that directly violate racing rules, no matter how they got into the horse.
Right. The job of stewards and commissions isn't to determine exactly how something entered an animal's system. That can be impossible. But to enforce strict liability, meaning the trainer is responsible for protecting the horse from exposure to prohibited substances. And in this case, when 4 horses test positive at the same meet, regulators view it as a systemic issue, not an isolated mishap.
So fast forward to November 2024, when the Nevada Gaming Commission held its meeting. This is where Castillo appealed the sanctions imposed by the control board. His attorney, Jennifer Gaynor, argued forcefully on several points. She had only been retained recently. She could not present new evidence under commission rules. Past cases in Nevada did not result in penalties this severe. All horses were alive and doing well, which she said should matter in assessing risk. But the commission held firm.
Yeah, and one moment from that hearing really stood out. Commission Chair Jennifer Togliatti said, and I'm paraphrasing here for clarity, something along the lines of, "Someone could have been injured or killed. If that had happened, this would be a criminal case." Now, that line hit hard, because it goes to the heart of why regulators treat equine drug positives so seriously. People sometimes forget that racing is dangerous. Horses run at full speed, shoulder to shoulder. A compromised horse doesn't just risk its own safety. Jockeys, other horses, and everyone on the track are put at risk.
Right. Even the possibility of impaired behavior, altered cardiovascular response, or unpredictable reactions can be catastrophic. So when Chair Togliatti emphasized what could have happened, she wasn't being dramatic. She was grounding the decision in the principle that prevention is the foundation of regulation. And the commission voted 5-0 to uphold the suspension and the fine.
Unanimous. No dissent. That's extremely rare for a penalty of this magnitude.
A lot of racing fans asked, why 15 years? That's a career-ending suspension for most people. And to be clear, the commission didn't accuse Castillo Jr. of intentionally administering anything. They stuck strictly to the positive tests and the responsibilities outlined in state rules.
But the sheer pattern, 4 horses, all winners, all at the same fair meet, made this case stand out.
You hit on something important. Patterns matter. Regulators look for clusters because clusters suggest systemic breakdowns in barn management, biosecurity, or medication control. Even without intent, repeated positives create serious concerns about stable operations.
But again, let's emphasize, we're not asserting motive. We're looking at things purely through the regulatory lens the Commission itself uses.
Exactly. And another factor that appears to have influenced the Commission was the timing. 4 positives in under 2 weeks is almost unheard of in most racing jurisdictions. When it does happen, penalties tend to escalate fast.
Let's talk about the trainer himself. Ricardo Castillo Jr. started training in 2023, a newcomer by racing standards. This makes the situation even more complicated because any early career violation, let alone something this severe, can shut the door on future opportunities. He has not saddled a horse since May 31, 2025, just before the sanctions were formally imposed. For a young trainer, time out of the sport can be devastating professionally and financially.
And then there's his father, Ricardo P. Castillo Sr., who returned to training in 2025. His return raised a few eyebrows simply because 2 of the horses involved, BNB Hasta La Luna and Famous Prizes, later appeared under his name. Now, to be clear, there is no regulatory finding against Castillo Sr. tied to the Elko positives. The Commission did not accuse him of wrongdoing. The information simply reflects trainer transfers recorded in Equibase data, which is publicly available.
Right. Trainer transfers happen constantly for many reasons: family emergencies, health issues, logistics, financial considerations. Transfers alone don't imply anything improper, but they do add context to the overall narrative of how the horses continued their racing careers.
Right. Another important aspect is the horses themselves. They were disqualified from their victories, and the total purse money, $17,700, was ordered returned. But beyond that, the horses were not barred from racing. They were not deemed unsafe or unfit following the positives. They moved forward, continued racing, and based on available public records, remained active and sound.
Which is important because sometimes people assume a drug positive means the horse was harmed. And while prohibited substances can cause harm, each case is specific, and welfare assessments are based on veterinary evaluation and regulatory protocols, not speculation.
Let's talk about something that trips people up. The difference between the Nevada Gaming Control Board and the Nevada Gaming Commission. The Control Board investigates, issues complaints, and imposes preliminary discipline. The Commission hears appeals and makes final rulings. So when Castillo Jr. went before the Commission on November 20, 2024, he was appealing the Control Board's actions, not relitigating the entire case.
Exactly. And attorney Jennifer Gaynor emphasized that she couldn't introduce new evidence. That's because commission hearings are designed to review procedural fairness and determine whether the control board acted within its authority, not to reopen fact-gathering. People often assume appeal hearings work like courtroom trials. In racing regulation, that's not how it works.
This case has sparked a lot of discussion across racing states. Some argue the penalties are too harsh. Others say they're necessary to send a message. But the broader impact is clear. Regulators want to deter any situation that could endanger a horse or rider or compromise the public's trust.
And whether people agree or disagree with the length of this suspension, the Commission's unanimous vote shows how serious they consider equine drug positives, especially substances with potential to affect behavior and performance unpredictably.
So, where does this leave the sport? For one, it reinforces that racing is constantly evolving in its approach to safety and integrity. Testing is more advanced than ever. Penalties are more severe. Oversight bodies are working to show the public that the welfare of horses and riders comes first.
And on a human level, this case is a reminder that careers, families, and reputations are deeply affected by regulatory decisions. It's a difficult chapter for everyone involved. But racing has to balance compassion with accountability.
Well said. It's a tough story, but an important one. And understanding it requires nuance, not headlines.
That's all for today's episode of Trackside Conversations. Thank you for joining us as we unpacked one of the most consequential regulatory decisions to hit quarter horse racing in recent years.
As always, stay informed, stay curious, and stay compassionate. The racing world is complex, but together, we can understand it better.
We'll see you next time.